What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark, MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm doing a TV review. I waited until I had finished season 1 of Your Friends and Neighbors to talk about it. I have some thoughts, so let's get into it. This show does have audio description on Apple Plus. The stars here, Jon Hamm. I mean, he's really the reason you're watching it. If you're watching it for Amanda Peet or Olivia Munn, good on you. You know, I don't really know the rest of the people in the cast. I think Corbin Burnson's in this, um, for like a hot second. He's still around, which is amazing. But yeah, it's it's Apple's new prestige drama. As many have said, it's the prestige drama. I don't think it is. I think it's just fine. I think Apple has made better shows. But that's the hot take that I'm here for. How good is Your Friends and Neighbors? Is it great or is it just good? I'm going to say it's just good. So, over the course of the season, by the way, spoilers, because I'm recapping the entire season, but not like play by play. So, just like some themes and ideas that run through Your Friends and Neighbors and why I'm giving like the whole season a certain grade. Click like and subscribe. And join my cult following here on YouTube where we chant, we don't do that. This is, Jon Hamm is back into the business world, and that's supposed to be the allure, is because he has a certain type. So they're like, what if we got Jon Hamm to do Don Draper again, but it was like not old? It was like new. What if it was like a new Don Draper? What if he was like in like a current time? What would that look like? And then make that show. It only made it. It was Your Friends and Neighbors. So he works at like an investment firm or something, and at the top of the series, he ends up sleeping with somebody who he ends up working with, and his friend slash coworker uses that against him to force him out of the company because there's some sort of weird clause where he can't sleep with anybody who's under him. Even though the girl works in a different department, she technically is ranked under him, but then they just go and promote her to the same level. Like she ends up getting his job. Um, they don't really explore her more. It feels like they're going to explore her more or stay with that company more at the beginning of the series. They just kind of abandon it, like in large part. They actually kind of just abandon a lot of things and a lot of ideas as the show kind of shifts and turns away from, like, he tries to stay in the financial world and, get hired at other companies. That doesn't really work out for him. Eventually, he decides the way to get money so that he can maintain his lifestyle is to rob his neighbors, his friends and neighbors, because he's upscale, a wealthy man himself. Everybody thinks he's still wealthy, but he really, after this deal, he lost a lot of things that he shouldn't have lost. So he's suddenly looking at being less than, and the only way to do it is he knows the exorbitant amount of wealth that all of his friends have and how they just collect things that just are sitting there that are worth, tens of thousands of dollars, and he can just easily take a watch that's worth however many and then pawn it and then be good to go for a while. So he basically does that for a while. The series does open up at the beginning with him like covered in blood, and he wakes up and he's like, how did I get here? And then we have to spend all season long figuring that out. Not really. Spend until like episode 7, I think, and then by 7 I think you're caught up. I think it was 7. Uh, and then you see him sort of getting into this underbelly and figuring out like where can he sell this watch, because it's a very specific watch. They're all like coded, and there's like a license for it and all this kind of, and he doesn't have it. He just has the watch. So, but it still is like a fancy watch that he's sure somebody would want for, which leads him to this sort of like shady underworld of things, and people are trying to figure out what it is that he's doing, and he gets involved. There's also a lot of stuff with his home life. He has an ex-wife, Mel, who was the one who cheated. I hate this character, by the way. I hate Mel so much. Amanda Pete's character, I've never thought she was a strong actress. I thought she's been okay, but she's being handed a role here that doesn't even make sense. And it's a really hard to like not like to it's a really hard to like role, because you're supposed to be rooting for Coop anyway, and she sort of seems like she's the barrier that's standing between Coop and his kids like half the time. But I don't like her self-righteousness about parenting all the time. So she's the one who cheated, and now she lives with the guy that she cheated with, and Coop has to live in a shittier house, like a smaller rental or something like that. And so she has the kids. The son is a stoner, and she lets the daughter have sex inside the house. And then she tries to have speeches to Coop about how he's ruining, how she can't, she can't have Coop around. There's like later on in the show, like she tells Coop that she's worried that he's gonna like corrupt it. I was like, to what extent? Like, what else could you possibly? Do you think maybe the fact that like she takes no ownership of anything ever? She just gets sad and sits on like porches a lot and looks morose. That's kind of like the extent of Amanda Pete's character. Is they don't really give her self-reflection. They just use her as a tool, as a device to like stand between things, or for Jon Hamm to bounce back and forth off of, or to remember the good old days with. She's not really a sustainable character in and of herself. She's not fleshed out. They kind of did this. Hamm had to work with January Jones in Mad Men. Now, the difference there is that they didn't give January Jones a ton of shit to do in season 1 of Mad Men. She wasn't the co-lead by any means. She wasn't like second billing here. Arguably, Amanda Peet is second billing. So she has like the second most amount of stuff to do, and we follow her the next most amount of time. When we're not following Coop, we constantly see Amanda Peet, her character. But she's not really being given like a range of tasks. She doesn't really have her own thing. She doesn't really have her own subplot. All of her things just seem to revolve around Coop. So she never gets to evolve as a person the same way that Betty Draper evolved over the course of Mad Men. So we actually saw Betty Draper have wants and desires and needs, and she didn't come out immediately and just accuse Don. We saw like an actual growth of character. So that way, by the time Mad Men was done, Betty was in a completely different place, and the writers supported January Jones with actually good writing. I don't think January Jones is a phenomenal actress, which is why we haven't seen her in like 1,000 things since Mad Men, but the show used her and knew how to use her perfectly. I don't think the writers of Your Friends and Neighbors know what to do with Amanda Peet. I don't think they know how to support her character. I don't think Mel's well written as a character. She just comes across as being the shrill ex, who's just, what does she do for a living? She's got this ridiculous vehicle. They call it like the Assmobile or something at some point, where she's trying to sell something, but like her ass is on it, like this pink car. I can't remember. It was a joke from like episode 2 or 3. There's nothing. She never makes a good choice where people are like, "Oh, that's relatable," or "Oh, I see your point." But yet she's the one who has custody. She's the one who has kids, and she's the one who always gets on the high horse above Coop. And it's like, yeah, we know what Coop is doing, but she doesn't know what Coop is doing. So what is it that she thinks about Coop's life that makes him so unfit to be a parent? What is it about Coop's life and his choices? She thinks that she's a great parent, but why? Like, what is it about her life that supports that? And what is it about her relationship with her kids? Because they don't really even support it through the kids. The kids don't even really seem to be super stoked to see Mel half the time. The daughter maybe more than the son, Hunter. But Hunter has to avoid his mom all the time because his mom doesn't approve of him being high, but she doesn't really stop it. I mean, it's not really like Mel doesn't really know how to parent. So that's sort of half the problem with the series, is that this is like the other thing that Coop has to deal with. The other thing is Sam, which is Olivia Munn's character, who becomes more important because the series needs her to be, but they don't really push her relationship with Coop to a point where the emotional payoff that is required at the end of the season matters. she has a little bit more, there's some complexities, but most of them end up supporting Coop more than they do her. Like, Sam is, again, just sort of like a tool for Coop's development. The whole show supports Jon Hamm. It doesn't support the ensemble. Everybody just seems to be there to be some sort of like a sounding board or something for Jon Hamm's character to be able to move from one piece to another. He even has a best friend who I don't know really that he did anything. Benny, I don't think he really evolves much as a character. Um, Olivia Munn, Sam's ex, Paul. We don't spend too much time with him, but we probably should have, based on where his character goes by the end of the season. Nick is kind of a one-note character. The Mel, he doesn't really have too much of his own stuff to do. He's just kind of like an athlete, you know. That's his thing. He's famous. People know who he is. It's a fancy life. He has a ton of money. Seems like a nice guy. What does he do? I don't know. You know, this series doesn't support its ensemble. It doesn't give them its Mad Men. Actually, one of the reasons why Mad Men won Best Series all the time was because of its ensemble, because we actually knew who all of those characters were, and they all had their own things, and we didn't spend every waking moment with Don Draper, because they found all of the other characters compelling too, and it shaped out the ensemble. So by the end of 6 seasons, we felt like we had a family that we were leaving behind. Here, Jon Hamm could literally move to another like city in season 2. I don't think anybody would notice. I think they'd just be like, "Oh, where's his family?" I don't know. I don't think it matters. I don't think it would affect the show. If he got a job offer or something in Tokyo, like the structure of the series doesn't support the supporting cast. It supports him, so he can be transplanted wherever with a new supporting cast of characters. All he would have to do is lament the fact that he's not around his kids a couple times, so that he still seems like a solid father. Maybe he misses Mel or something like that. But there isn't really much else to support him. That like there's nothing that connects him. He just kind of navigates this world, and it's more about uh, like the idea of wealth and not wanting it to disappear and trying to maintain your image and being in a community where you have to pay all of these stupid fees for everything and like to stay in a to keep your status and stay at the country club. You know, you have to pay the stupid rates to be at a country club, and he has to always look like and keep the air of the fact that everything is okay, even though it's not. So he has to find some way to maintain an income to keep that level. But none of the characters he ever interacts with are ever interesting enough to sustain why he would want to be in this. There's, you know, Sam would have been an interesting character to explore because it would have given him maybe a hope for a different direction, but or giving Mel more to do. I don't know, or some sort of self-actualization of maybe she wakes up and realizes that she messed up with Nick or something. I don't know. This show just has no bearings at all, except to just the show is designed to support Jon Hamm. So it really does feel like somebody was like, what if Don Draper? And then they cast Jon Hamm and they were like, build this series around Jon Hamm. And they did. But they didn't realize what made Mad Men special was the supporting cast. It was everybody else. It was John Slattery. It was Christina Hendricks. It was Vincent Kartheiser. It was Elizabeth Moss. And all those other characters had stuff to do, and they all had their individual plot lines and stories, and we dealt with them from season 1 all the way to the end. Even Kiernan Shipka as the daughter had stuff to do that was increasingly more interesting over the course of each season. We watched her sort of grow up, and she dealt with this sort of like absent father in a way that these kids don't. These kids they don't react to their dad the same way as being like, you're never here. Why don't you love me? You know, I mean, like, it doesn't really have that. So the daughter doesn't really have any complex thoughts about how men view her based on the fact that because her dad didn't run around. Her mom did. So if anything, the fact that she has learned to have sex at a young age reflects more of the fact that she saw her mom cheat. Like, they didn't really learn any bad behavior from the dad. The dad also isn't really a drug user, so the son is just getting that from being a kid. You know, I mean, like, they don't show Jon Hamm as a stoner. He's not casually, we have a lot of these characters that like to just smoke weed on the lowdown all the time, and they go get it, and that's their thing. But nah, no, that's not it either. So, yeah, I liked Jon Hamm in the show. I liked what the show had to say about wealth and kind of the obscenity of it, and also the absurdity of trying to maintain it in the lengths to which somebody could do that. But man, the supporting cast here, none of them have their own thing to do. They're all just like, it's like they're just waiting. Like they're just sitting in a room somewhere waiting for Jon Hamm to show up. The most complex character is his sister, who's Lena Hall. Lena Hall plays a character. I thought she did a nice job because they handed her immediately. She was given something complex as a character. She's a character who had spent some time sort of away because of mental health problems, and Jon Hamm was trying to figure out how to, keep her at his house while also still trying to keep up his criminal life. And I thought for a while there are times where she gets to ruminate on her existence and how she got to where she is in ways that some of the other characters don't. We don't fully see that from Sam or from Mel in the same way that we see it from her when she sort of focuses on little things. Like towards the end, she's got this guy that she dated. She has this record and she wants to give this record back to him. He doesn't even want the record. And she's like, how'd I get to this point? And so it's just like, it's a little bit of character exploration in a show that has none. And it made me excited. It's like, oh my God, we're exploring one of the supporting characters individually outside of Jon Hamm with no relation to Jon Hamm. That's what I'm saying is like, it's exploring these characters. Yeah, like Mel has a job, but they don't really explore it. They don't really go there. She doesn't have friends at her job. We don't spend a lot of time there. We don't learn enough about her workplace environment. Like how much money do you make here? What's the workplace? What's going on here? She just kind of gets let go from her job at one point. It's just like, okay, are you going to drive around in a car with your ass on it now? Like, I don't understand. So, prestige drama, I think, is a stretch. I think Jon Hamm does an excellent job. And they're adding James Marsden for season 2. It's already been picked up for season 2. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not James Marsden is there to support Jon Hamm or whether or not James Marsden is being billed as a co-lead. And then the entire supporting cast has support now 2 men, or if they actually figure out how to give somebody like Amanda Peet something to do. So she needs her own storyline that is completely separate from everybody else so that she can evolve as a character instead of evolving through Jon Hamm, because she pretty much stagnates her way through the show. I like the audio description. I thought it was good. I like the theme song where it's like, keeping up with the Joneses, because Jon Hamm is in a movie called Keeping Up with the Joneses. So I thought that was sort of like meta without knowing, because this show is also about keeping up with the Joneses, sort of that whole mentality. But it also comes back full circle because he's already done this before. This is Jon Hamm just like reliving. It's like he does one thing really well and people are just going to keep asking him to do it. So, dude started off as a contestant on Singled Out. That was where he started. It's so funny to think that. Yeah. So if Jon Hamm got a nomination, sure. I don't think I know it seems like I'm being hard on Amanda Peet and Olivia Munn. I like them in things, but when you push people into prestige drama, you have to figure out, okay, so we're working with these actresses, how do we support them? And they figured that out with January Jones, I didn't even think Vincent Kartheiser had anything strong to do that would have led to Mad Men for him, but they supported him through Mad Men. They gave him that kind of writing. Some people have already done something and then they're stepping into a role and they've already shown you what they can do. So it's a little bit easier. Like Elizabeth Moss had already been in The West Wing, so we knew she could handle dramatic stuff. So it was easier to connect those dots. But with some other characters, it's like, okay, this is the first big thing that you're really doing. How do we support your character? How do we help you evolve? And I just don't think that they did that. I'm gonna give Your Friends and Neighbors season 1 a B minus. I think there's definitely some interesting stuff here, but it's not in the ensemble. It's actually in the plot of the story. It's in the general concept of keeping up with the Joneses, and why should you have to? Um, so that's my hot take on Your Friends and Neighbors season 1. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.